Welcome back to the Andrew Tate Show by GSMC Sports. In the first segment, we talked about the Boston Celtics win last night over the Dallas Mavericks. We were just talking about the Big 12 looking into a private equity investment with CVC. We're continuing that but switching that a little bit in terms of the overall topic as I get this set up. The Big 12 conference is in preliminary discussions about a potential private equity investment with CVC Capital Partners, as we said in the last segment. This unprecedented move aims to enhance the financial stability and competitive edge of the conference as it expands to 16 members and seeks to bridge the revenue gap with other power conferences like the SEC, Big Ten, and ACC. Additionally, the Big 12 is exploring selling its naming rights to a title sponsor, with Allstate emerging as a frontrunner. This could lead to a rebranding of the conference as the Allstate 12 Conference, potentially securing a 9-figure deal. These discussions were highlighted at the recent Big 12 spring meetings in Dallas, where CVC Capital presented its proposal. The Big 12's current media rights deal with Fox and ESPN, extending until 2031, is worth approximately $2.3 billion, distributing nearly $32 million annually per school, starting in 2025-26. Despite this, the Big 12's payouts still lag behind the Big Ten, SEC, and ACC. In 2024, the Big 12 distributed a record $470 million, including revenue from various championships and sponsorships, yet this amount represented a reduced per-school payout due to the inclusion of new members like BYU, Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston. The potential CVC investment aims to position the Big 12 more favorably ahead of its next media rights contract in 2031, with expectations of increased television revenue providing a long-term return on investment. The CVC stake would likely be distributed similarly to member schools' shares under a new media deal. Commissioner Brett Yormark has been pivotal in these aggressive and innovative approaches to maximize the conference's revenue. His reputation for bold deal-making is well regarded within the league, and his strategies reflect the necessity for additional revenue streams in light of financial pressures from the NCAA settlement. The move towards private equity investment and selling naming rights aligns with trends in college sports, where securing additional funding is becoming increasingly crucial. The Big 12's exploration mirrors previous, albeit unsuccessful, attempts by other conferences like the Pac-12. If successful, these initiatives could set a new precedent in college athletics, demonstrating the growing intersection between sports and private equity. So, as we said, Tate, a similar topic. We're still in that private equity investment deal, but now we're talking about selling the naming rights. What are your feelings? You mentioned feelings.
This is the same story.
What are your feelings on the Allstate 12?
Okay. Again, this was supposed to have been on Friday. Some things kind of happened where we couldn't do a show on Friday. We couldn't do a show on Monday.
Here we are on Tuesday.
On Friday, if we'd have done this show, I thought it was disgusting. I'm like, no. Think about it. The Allstate 12 sounds so
It's hard.
dumb.
It doesn't roll off the tongue, does it?
Ladies and gentlemen, my opinions have changed.
You have the floor.
I have changed I've thought about this. And what made me start thinking about this is NASCAR. And most of my life as a kid, NASCAR, it was the Winston Cup. From 1971 to I think like 2010, it was the Winston Cup. And I thought that's what it was. I had no clue it was a sponsor. It was the Winston Cup. And then I think in 2010, right around that time, Winston could no longer do the sponsorship because they are a cigarette manufacturer. And it became the Nextel Cup. And I'm like, oh, this is horrible. How can you change it to the Nextel Cup? Got used to the Nextel Cup, and the Nextel got bought out. It became the Sprint Cup. And everyone, matter of fact, I thought the Sprint Cup made sense because it was a racing. So Sprint phones, Sprint racing, everything about it, I thought it fit. You know, fast forward to the day, it's the Monster Cup, you know. that's just the way it is. You start looking at that and you're saying, okay, you think the Virginia Slims tournament back in the day. This has been going on for years. No one has an issue with the Allstate Fiesta Bowl. Is there a problem with the Allstate Fiesta Bowl? Just when I was younger, and it used to be the Fiesta Bowl, then it became the Allstate Fiesta Bowl. People were upset. No one liked it. I played flag football in the flag football championships, and it was brought to you by the USS&G Sugar Bowl, which was sponsored for the Sugar Bowl during that time. No one thinks about that, but it just becomes a part of our daily talking. No one blinks an eye when it's like, oh, the Allstate Fiesta Bowl is going to have Michigan versus Oklahoma. It's just the way it is.
And we were talking on Friday about this, and I was like, that sounds weird. But then I started thinking, stadiums have been doing this forever. Think of the stadiums we grew up with
Stadium
who had names like named after maybe a person, and then they started being the AT&T Stadium or the Smirnoff Ice Stadium or the, I remember when Dallas became the Smirnoff Center, and I thought that was weird, but then you just get used to it.
Yeah, I mean, you speak back to another one, the FedEx Orange Bowl. It's in your mind. Now, granted, I can't get down with that Pop-Tart Bowl.
To eat Pop-Tarts.
If you're at the Pop-Tart Bowl, I think everyone should be able to get free access. Everyone, when you come in, you get a bag of Pop-Tarts. And don't just give me 2. I need at least 4 Pop-Tarts.
Oh, I want.
So when you think about it, it just becomes a natural thing. So if it becomes the FedEx 12, I just named it the Allstate 12. Right now, it sounds clunky, but eventually it'll just become normal. And it sounds like what they're leading to is the Allstate Big 12.
Mm-hmm. The Allstate 12 does sound like a court case or a gang or, one of those news stories. The Allstate 12 was caught today.
But the Allstate Big 12...
You get used to it. I'm actually getting used to it just because we've talked about it so much.
Right. It doesn't even sound bad anymore. Initially, I felt opposite. But you're talking about 9 figures for the naming rights. Listen, this is the Andrew Tate Show. And if Allstate offered me 9 figures, this would be the Allstate Sports Show with Andrew Tate. That's exactly what it would be. This helps the Big 12. Ultimately, the Big 12 has found themselves squarely behind the SEC and the Big 10. They and in danger of becoming a second-class league, a filler league for the 2 big ones. Making these decisions for private equity, making these decisions for new naming rights, I think are very smart decisions that could not only help them draw even, but even maybe catapult them beyond them. Because as I said in the last segment, this extra revenue, these partnerships, they're going to not only generate cash and resources, but connections to other avenues to be successful. So I think it's a good thing. The thing I've always thought about, if you're going to go that far and you're going to be the Allstate Big 12 conference, then why not? You got an East Division and West Division, I guess. Name the East Division, the Coke Division, and the Pepsi Division, the other one. I'm going all in. I'm all in on generating revenue because these schools need it. Most people don't think about it this way, but as I said in the last segment, there are very few athletic departments that are profitable. There are very few, and if they are profitable, they have a very thin margin. These are revenue streams that can literally help a university. These are revenue streams that make it so that other sports that don't make money, or the women's volleyball and the men's golf and the lacrosse team, by having a strong athletic department, it ensures that these sports are going to stick around. Where most people are saying it's going to cost them, I looked at it over the weekend. So many people talked about how private equity is going to cost all these women's sports and all these low non-revenue generating sports from being existing. But they're all, every single one of them that I read and looked at were all, I feel not, there wasn't a shred of evidence that shows that these private equity firms have come in and wholesale changed a sports organization. They've only helped them. They've only enhanced them. Matter of fact, I'm going to go as far as to say, if anything, you want to know a private equity company that wholesale changes sports, these television contracts. These television contracts have made it so that these schools need to raid other universities, other conferences to get other players. Why is Florida State wanting out of the ACC? Because they're not making enough money, and if they went to the Big Ten or the SEC, then they would be a part of their television contract. No one talks about that. Private equity is bad, but television money is good. When you step back and look at it, only one of them are wholesalingly changing sports. It's the television contract. It's the ESPNs of the world that are wholesaling changing that. You don't hear that because ESPN's going to give you their own take on things. But no one thinks about why did the Pac-12 fold? Pac-12 was had one of their best years ever this past season. Why they folded? Because they couldn't get a television contract. Not because these schools wanted to leave. Not one school in the Pac-12 wanted to leave. Not one. And not even UCLA, who was losing massive amounts of money. None of them wanted to leave, but the UCLA and USC both went to the Big Ten because there was so much more money to be had. At most, you were going to get about $25 million to $30 million by being in the Pac-12, where you could get 70, 80, 90, $100 million for being in the Big Ten. So that's why they left.
I think we're running up against a little bit of nostalgia versus
Yes.
practicality. So it's always been done like this. We don't want things to change, but they're missing out on the potential practicality of all of these changes and what they can do to be beneficial. Because, people as a species, we don't like change.
Yeah, no, and that's the whole thing. I like it the way it used to be. That's what you always hear. Well, I liked it the way it used to be as well. And I remember, you go back and it's like the good old days. Well, the good old days are gone. You don't have a crank in front of your car. And now we got self-driving cars, electric vehicles, planes that can fly around the world. With change comes advancement. And sometimes giving up what was once something that was part of your life, you have to adjust. And this is one of those situations. I am now pro private equity, and and for a conference that is literally fighting for its life, because they are. If they don't make these changes, there's going to be some schools that are, if the opportunity comes up for the SEC to steal some of these schools would leave in a heartbeat because they can't compete. Secondly, if they don't leave, they're in danger of becoming a farm system where their top players are all getting plucked by the Big Ten and the SEC and maybe even the ACC. These moves, private equity, name change, are moves that are helping the Big 12 survive, and I'm for it.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and take our third break of this episode. When we come back, switching gears to some of our oddities in the news segments. The first up is a crossing guard who was arrested for giving her middle school students vapes, potentially other things as well. So you are tuned in.
Okay, wait, let me. You said giving her. I thought that was like a disease for a second. Then I read it, I'm like, she gave him the vapes.
The vape.
I'm like,
Vapors.
I'm like, well, how do you get the vapes?
Save it for the next thing.
Okay, sorry about that.
You're tuned into the Andrew Tate Show by GSMC Sports, and we will be right back.